Today, we are not doing the normal. Typically, every lecture we go over pro games that fit a specific pattern. Like I want to go over influence, let's say, so I find a bunch of pro games, go over influence, cool. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. And this one's going to be inspired based on... that sounds really bad if I say it that way. Too late, you already began it. Alright, this is actually going to be inspired by a lot of my students. Though it's not just my students. It's also by some of the people that I've been playing variously around on, Taigem and the new Korean server that I've been playing on. Some games I popped in on here on KGS. And that's, people seem to be having trouble figuring out when they should and should not pincer. This seems to be a topic that keeps coming up with some regularity. So I figured, you know what, let's actually have a lecture, at least one lecture, on just when you should and shouldn't pincer. It seems like a really, really great idea. And what's interesting about this, KGS rule is always pincer. Sometimes. But the funny thing about this is I almost didn't really want to do this lecture, because I bet if I walk you through a certain just few questions, you probably have a fairly good understanding of when you should and shouldn't pincer without me actually having to say much. Is Twitch still offline? No, I see myself quite online, actually. It's all about direction, yes and no. A little bit more than that. Direction is a very vague thing to say. Saying like, well, it's just direction. But what does that mean exactly? So I'm going to give you a few tips on when you should and shouldn't pincer that you probably already know, but you might not already be aware that you know. For example, what's a good example of this? All right, here's a good example. Let's say you are about to play a game rather than watch a lecture. What is one thing you want your moves to do in that new game that you're playing? A very vague question, but I imagine you'll probably give me the answer I'm looking for. You want your moves to win the game, okay? A bit vague. You want to win and kill. But how do you... Okay, Jermel, you might be onto it. How do you kill? How do you kill something in a Go game? Give me a Dawn level answer, please. Don't say surround it. Okay, I just said don't surround it. Thank you! Yes! Yes, we've got it. Thank you. Your opponent creates too many weak groups. In other words, what you're getting at is what we've always been saying whenever there's a fight. If you're just fighting one group, it's probably going to live because they can respond to your move every time you play a move. So if they only need to live, they will find a way to live. But if there are multiple weak groups, then suddenly your attack has multi-purpose, right? You're attacking two different things at once. They can't do anything about it. Something finally gets defended when something else doesn't get defended. The thing that doesn't get defended gets punished as a result. So multi-purpose moves are pretty much what you're looking for in a Go game. And when to pincer and when not to pincer kind of falls back to that exact same idea on where is my move getting the most value from. To that end, when we look at a brand new game and just look at, let's say, a single stone on the board. I assume we're going to be counting to 2 a lot in this lecture. Yeah, we will be counting to 2 a lot in this lecture. If you have a completely open board, for example, it gets really, really hard to say when to pincer and when not to pincer because there's so much value. Because there's so much value that you can really get away with doing whatever you want. Right? If your opponent decides to approach, first lesson on pincers, verbal form of pincer is to pinch. Okay. But yeah, on a completely open board where there's not much going on, don't worry, the tree don't worry about the tree. The tree's destroyed. Completely open board. You can pincer. You cannot pincer. You can take open corners. You can do whatever you want. No one can equivocally come around and say, you know, you shouldn't have pincered there, that's bad. You can do it because only the 2 space high is okay, fine. Oh man, are you happy? You can pincer in a variety of different ways. Here we go. All of these are valid moves. But as the board gets filled up, we start finding more moves having more value than others. Let's take a really basic example. Let's say we do 3/4s. And let's say someone encloses. Alright, our opponent approaches. Now we might find approach high. We might find approach low. For the sake of argument, let's go and take a look at the low right now. As I said, tree is destroyed. Here's an example of when we can start finding multiple meaning to our moves in determining when to pincer and when not to pincer. Because what's one move that immediately comes to everyone's mind when you see this position? Okay, well apparently R11 comes to mind, which is exactly what I was looking for. So I thank you very much for saying it. I very much appreciate it. Exactly what I was looking for. And the reason why it comes to mind is because it's probably one of the most common pincers that you can use in this particular situation. Why? Because this move, sorry, can't click, there we go. This move is doing 2 things at once. It's putting a lot of pressure, well, some pressure on the approaching stone, making it struggle a little bit to get an adequate base because we see that it can't get a 2-space extension anymore. But at the same time, it's also extending from the corner. So this is a pretty valuable move in this particular situation. We're extending from our corner and we're putting pressure on our opponent. To address the comment that you played it before but you didn't like it, I assume you mean you didn't like it as black or you didn't like it as white. I'm assuming black. Okay, that's just a different constraint. That has nothing to do with the pincer itself. That is okay, yeah. He could have played anything and you'd have been like, you know what, I don't like this position. He could have passed and you'd be like, that's just unfair for me. So no matter what he did, you were gonna be kind of not coming out very well there. That's just more of he probably had a greater Joseki knowledge than you did, so things didn't go very well for you. That said, even this early on in the game, it's still very difficult to say, okay, you should always pincer in this situation and you should not always pincer in this other situation. Again, because the board is still so open. Here, for example, it's still completely okay to pincer because we are in fact getting a bit of an extension here. You can even go one further back if you so felt inclined. Also maintaining pressure on this group. However, here, it's still also completely fine not to pincer. Both are completely acceptable. So to that end, we see an example of when it's completely fine to pincer. When, for example, we can do 2 things at once. When we can extend from our corner, as well as apply pressure to our opponent. That seems to be a pretty good idea. We saw that here and here. But let's take an example of when people should probably not be pincering. And for that, I need to change white's moves a bit. Let's say, wait a minute. I need to go, let's put 4 stones here. Yeah, I need that there, I want that there. Let's go here. No. Sorry. There we go. Now I'm fine. If you were white, where was your next obvious play going to be? Alright. I like your answer there. I'm gonna go call you Patchouli. I think that's how you spell it. I've been contemplating in my head for a while now. But I'm seeing... Okay, you did say something very, very interesting that we're gonna get to in a minute. K3, everyone else though is focusing on the bottom of the board. So why are you focusing on the bottom of the board? Why are so many more people saying play in the K3 area rather than in the O17 area? Because of the Shamari. They want to block... Okay, yes, they don't want that. We're looking, even if you might not be aware of it, we're looking for dual purpose moves. Like even right now, we're always trying to find dual purpose moves. So in this instance, and I've completely screwed this up. There we go. Now I have white's next move. Okay, so we're looking for dual purpose moves and blocking the extension from black. As we can see here, this is where black wants to extend from his enclosure. Being able to block that and extend from our corner at the same time is a very good idea because we're doing two things at once. And whenever we're doing two things at once, chances are we're doing something very, very good. And this is also probably one of the most common situations I find where people kind of get where to pincer and where not to pincer really, really wrong. Because similarly, as we don't want black to get his enclosure and an extension, typically speaking, black's going to block you from getting your enclosure and an extension, right? Because we just took an enclosure. One thing black doesn't want to see here is you enclosing yourself. Even if you're a 4-4, you don't really want to give this to your opponent. So this natural next move. However, big however. This is the most common area where I see people get pincering wrong. And I'm using wrong in a very, very loose way, because the board's still open. You can still argue a variety of different moves because there's a lot available on the board. But more often than not, what we're going to see here in the wrong scenario is white pincering. Why is this usually considered wrong, or why might I be calling it wrong? Does anyone have any idea why this might be considered not correct? Nope, doesn't have anything to do with C8 being weak. There are no other stones besides the one. The one stone that is our opponent's is nicely pincered, so no, our stone is not weak. I like this answer immediately. This is saying that the bottom is less important. Makes the bottom extension bad too small. All of these answers are very, very good. B double approach is a multi-purpose move. Even if we don't double approach, even if we simply go here in the corner, there are two options available to black, and both of them kind of suck. We could, for example, play here, and say we're going to develop influence here, and I see this so many times. This is something that you're going to see, I promise you, even in amateur Dawn games, for reasons that completely escape me. And the trouble with this is we are now building up this wall off a low stone. That low stone has a lot of different ways to be reduced. So you're building up for influence in a way that's going to be reduced extremely easily, right? When you're trying to make a framework or influence, you don't want that development to just disappear like that. Otherwise, why did you give up your corner? Why did you give up all that territory? It doesn't seem very consistent. What about Tanuki playing on top? Oh yeah, we don't have to reduce this now. If white wants to just keep investing stone after stone after stone to get this area for himself, have at it. We don't have to do that immediately. Yeah, as black you can play elsewhere. But the trouble here is it's really, really hard to take for white because you need many more moves, and it's really, really easy for white to reduce because if you don't do it, then congratulations, A through D can be played, and if you just give up Sente, then your opponent's just going to keep growing elsewhere for an area that's not really worth it, especially in the beginning of the game. Now, alternatively, you might say, well, that's completely okay. I would never play that way. I would just block here. Duh. And still, this isn't all that great. Not about being over-concentrated, Merrick. It's about, exactly, yes, precisely. It's about K3's efficiency. Right now, K3 is in trouble. Because we do not want to... Okay, we don't want to see that either. We don't want to see our opponent pincering this. And we also don't want to... Go away. We also don't want to see our opponent getting stronger, let's say, and then going back and pincering it. This stone has now become a liability, which means even though this variation normally gives our opponent, gives white rather, Sente, because of this one marked stone, we know that black's going to get Sente because white needs to protect himself. Otherwise, this stone is going to be in a lot of trouble. So, even though you're not dead on the board, even though all of your stones are arguably okay, this isn't very efficient. The bottom group is just trying to live. The left was just trying to, I guess, attack K6 a little bit. But the question is, how can we be more efficient? How can we do two things at once? Well, given that we saw those variations, if we do something as simple as backing off and taking our territory here, we are aiding K3. It's not going to be attacked as we saw in the other variations. We are getting territory, which is very, very nice. So we are doing multiple things at once here. G4 I like. G4 I do not like. G4 is a greedy move, because your opponent can actually invade you immediately, but that's not the point of this lesson. You can double approach, but that leads into some other variations, and I wasn't going to go over them, because once you get into that, you can think, well, there's the high approach, there's the low approach, and the various variations that, you know, go with those. And I'd rather not get bogged down in a Jiseki lesson. But yes, those are okay too, and they will yield, you know, similar results. K3 is going to be in trouble, or a wall is going to be built up that you really can't use very well as white. I personally don't like K3 because of black's approach at C6. K3, okay, because of black's approach at C6. Ah, really? Alright, I'm kind of curious. Where would you play instead of K3? Because we've already found that this is a multi-purpose move, so what would you do instead? G3 or O17? Well, I do have to say G3 does open up the possibility that your opponent can still approach, or not approach, but extend. And O17 actually flatly increases the chance of black getting a double wing. So I would say that's not good, but you are also a down level player, so you can play as you will. Back to lecture. Alright, so that's one example of when it's not so good to pincer. Or wait, yes, not so good to pincer. Choice of pincer not mattering so much as, you know, in general, we don't want to do that. So the question is, where are some other good examples of where you can pincer and when not to pincer? Let's see, what was I going to use here? I think I want a 4-4 there. Here's like an okay one. Let's see, this is, I was going to go at the end, but let's do it now. Here's an example again of where things get a little bit murky. When your opponent approaches, you can pincer. Patchouli says pincer to prevent the Chinese, always. Don't have to do that always. In fact, some would argue that if you are doing that to prevent the Chinese, and you shouldn't be playing Go. Not me, I didn't say that, I didn't make that up, that was in a book. But yes, here's an example of when you can for a specific reason. We could say that I'm going to pincer here because if I don't, my opponent can grow a very large area, so I want to put an end to that. Similarly, we can say that, you know what, I don't mind that, we can back away. So here's another either or. You can do one, you can do the other, it's fine. So let's make this a little bit more difficult. Let's say we go into Bizarro Land, where for some weird reason Black has himself an enclosure. How he got it on this board, I have no idea. Now pincering is a little bit harder to come by, because we could do that. He cheated, exactly. White went up, got a drink, and he came back and there was an enclosure on the board. Alright. Here's an example of where it gets a little bit easier to decide if we want to pincer or not, because we can picture pincers on the board. And we know that we're jumping into an area that's a little bit easier for Black to control than it is for us. Right? Because he's got a nice strong corner, he's approaching. There's a lot of complicated variations that he can go into, such as the one where he gets to finish his enclosure, make it harder to reduce, and attack you at the same time. You might say, I don't want to do that. I would much rather let him get whatever he wanted to do, split the left side, and then reduce later. This is also completely acceptable. But we're going to make this a little bit harder still. We need a variation. Okay, I'm trying to use variations that you'd actually see in your games. Let's change this to a 3/4 stone. Let's go ahead and enclose. Let's just get rid of something here. See, that's nicely modern. Now Black has a chance to approach. Okay, good. White can play here. Let's have Black settle. Don't mind the Jisheki that I'm using exactly. I'm not using the magic sword. Don't mind the Jisheki that I'm actually using. I'm just trying to pull up examples. Alright, there we go. Here's an example of something that we might actually see in a real game. And that is, we've had some exchanges. Black has a couple of corners right now. We have our groups mostly settled. The upper right is mostly settled, right? Good strong shape there. The bottom's doing pretty good. It can capture the stone, can extend, can connect, can do a lot of different things. So we're not really worried about it right now. So we can concentrate solely on these two stones. Black has approached us, and we must make the decision again. Are we going to pincer, or are we not going to pincer? And keep in mind that we're trying to have White do dual-purpose moves. So what has more value? The pincer here, or backing off? And why are you making your decision? What do you guys think? You are saying the large knight for 500. Could do. Could do. M17 first. Ooh, M17 says you want a pincer. Okay. Taigem players play F16. Oh, don't even get me started about F16. Oh, I don't even want to go there. We're not ever discussing F16 today. But you are right about that. You are absolutely right about that. They do. Let's see what we have here. F16. I would play on left. Okay, I see why. Taigem. If white pincers, he gets double approach that attacks. Yep. Prime is exactly what I was looking at. On one hand, if we're looking for for moves that have double value, right? We can pincer. We're attacking here, but what's the other thing that we're trying to say? It looks like the other thing we're trying to say is I'm worried that if I back off, you know, maybe black gets to develop. I think that's the second thing that you're trying to say by pincering. However, if you do pincer, what we have to realize are there are forcing moves on the board. One forcing move, for example, is having black connect up, right? So right now, this could be a pretty nice forcing move later on. The trouble with that is if we play here and do a double approach, then we're allowing these two stones to come under attack, right? Because black can move up in what's probably going to be Sente. And now he's beginning to attack our two stones. So if we say that, for example, that we're not interested in this area, let's say we pick this variation first, then our two stones are floating. They're definitely going to be needing help right now. Otherwise, the attack's going to come and these two stones are going to be running away and it's not going to be pretty. Right? So to avoid that, I guess you're saying that we're going to play this variation in which we're building up from an area that we know we can't hold. It's a little bit too large. Maybe if we had D10, we could play this way. But this way, we know we can reduce this. Because this is just way too large an area to try to obtain for ourselves. So this is risky, but maybe it's playable. But we don't really have to play risky when we can just back off with either the small knight or the large knight as was suggested. And not be impatient. Our opponent can try to build this area up, but right now as it stands, we can go over top of this stone. We can still extend down here. And we can even extend over here. So we've got a lot of variation here for white, in which we don't create a weak group, or we aid the group that can be made weak so black can't attack us. Instead, we're going to be the ones doing the attacking. So the two purpose moves here are, one, we're taking territory, and we're aiding a group that can easily be made weak if we're not careful, because of those forcing moves. Let's see. White E17. Oh, kick? No, wait. I'm not sure what you mean, E17. Yeah. No? Oh, yeah, okay. So you want to kick this right now? And then play F16 obvious knight. Yeah. And then play here? No, you want to play C14. And then K16. You could do that. I'm not a fan, for reasons that kind of go outside the lecture, but suffice it to say, we know the invasion points here. You know you're going to probably, at the very most, try to play here. It's going to be Gote, black's going to develop. We might do that later, we might not. When to kick is its own lecture. I'm not going to really go into this. Suffice to say, kicking's becoming quite common in a few areas. I might go into that in some other time. Yeah, when to kick might be a different lecture. Alright, so let's see. What was example? That was an example of when not to. Okay, so let's go to when to. Okay, let's see. When is a good example of when to pincer? Can I alter this board a little bit? Alright. Okay, I have an example. Let's see. Do I want to use the same Orthodox? Because Orthodox is so common. Orthodox is... Ooh, no! Forget that. Chinese is more common. Okay. This is going to be an easy one. This is going to be an easy one. Easy example. Easy, 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 easy. Everyone should get this one. Especially since I just gave you the answer. Dewey Pincer here. Why or why not? From a real basic standpoint, Pincer here, I usually teach this. Okay, it's technically not absolutely correct of me to do so, and I freely admit that, but I usually teach this to my students as not to pincer because they're already pincered. And technically, if R9 was at R10, that would be more accurate. However, I don't care. It's still close enough. The point in the area is that black is pretty strong in the area with his framework, right? We're diving into a framework. We don't have to pincer when we're here. We can instead go and do anything else. Well, not anything else. We can kick here. That way, we can use our neighboring strong stones to attack white's position. Because we know, for example, that a two-space extension in and of itself is not alive. So here, we're defending our corner. White's forcing himself into a shape that we know can't live immediately. So we get to attack. This is probably one of the most basic sequences you're going to come up with nowadays with the Chinese Fuseki. But let's say you see the Sanrin say more, and I can't believe I just said that. It's the only time I'm saying this. And your opponent also jumps into your framework. This is also another example of when you don't want to pincer, because in here you can see a more clear example that our opponent is already pincered. And what is this going to give us? It's going to give us having no corner, and it's going to over-concentrate us, because this wall, we don't want that our 12 stone being there, right? Especially since we can make matters worse and point out the fact that this stone's not even dead, so we're over-concentrated, and our stone has Aji. So let's say we're going to be as solidly as we can play. We get rid of that Aji. Now it's a good variation, right? Because there's no more Aji, but now we're even more over-concentrated, so it's even worse. Which is why typically when your opponent jumps into a framework, and I don't care what framework it is. Actually, is there more than one framework? And when there's a Chinese, there's a Kobayashi. Does Kobayashi make an example? No, Kobayashi doesn't work an example. Chinese does. All the Chinese do. High Chinese, low Chinese. Yeah, pretty much of those. Not sure if we can do a good example of that on the Kobayashi. Actually, we can in a minute. That's going to be different. Suffice it to say, typically when you're dealing with a framework, if your opponent approaches your framework, probably don't want to pincer it. And we see that with the Chinese variation. We see that with the Sanrin say. And I didn't put it here. I went over it too fast. I'm sorry for that. Here it's pretty much the same thing. If we trade territory for influence, and then we look around at what we get for it, we see all of these low stones. We know that we're not actually playing for influence anymore. We're playing for territory. So we've got this large wall playing really low for territory with an ungodly amount of follow-up moves. If we're looking for ways that white can follow this up, we see A, B, C, D, E, and F. All of these are moves that can be played against whatever it is we thought we were going to play here. I guess technically we can also do G. So pincering does not make sense. Now, right on the back of that is again the framework. Now we have Kobayashi on the field, and our opponent might decide to approach us. So the question now again becomes, do we pincer or do we not pincer? Your favorite fruit seki? We play R4 because I like points. That's valid. Ish. That's one of the two reasons why you can play it. Pincering can be common, but it's a little bit less common. The two most common answers here are either to play here, because we can see really easily we've got a wall, and we've got that wonderful extension that we want with the wall. Right? So that can be used pretty easily. We can play for territory, because we're forcing our opponent into a two-space extension that we can attack, while we are not playing that, while we're developing our own territory. But if we pincer, can it be played? Yeah. But it gets very, very difficult to actually use the rest of our framework effectively if we play this way, because now lovely little F3 and F4 are in a little bit of trouble, right? I mean, there's the obvious weak point at A. F3 should be F5. What? For this to make more sense? No. Why would F3 be on the 5th line? You just broke my brain. F3 is too low. I like it being low. F5 would work better. F5 is just... Okay, for the sake of argument, if F5 or F3 was at F5, then this would be a completely different lecture, because now this lecture is wishful thinking moves. It's like, I'm gonna play here for influence, I guess, and then white backs off, and now I'm on the 5th line, and... Sorry, am I missing something? Anyway, I have absolutely no idea. Sorry. If I missed something obvious here, then I apologize. But having this stone floating in the middle of nowhere... Oh, wait, that was for Sanrinsei? Oh god, am I in the wrong one? I went to show Kobayashi. I don't know. I'm gonna go back to the lecture. What something that I actually know, because that just destroyed me. Yeah. Moving on. I might edit all of that out. If you really want, I can give you control and you can show me next at the end of this, like what you meant by F5. I am willing to learn. Now, what was I saying before my brain stopped working? Right, Kobayashi. So here, technically, you can in fact play this. Sometimes we see it. It's very rare to do so, because as pointed out right now, F3 and K4 aren't entirely useless, but they are a liability. They need defended. We probably aren't going to have a fun time settling this, especially since, as we see in this variation, white just got Sente. So that can be attacked now or later. Not going to be pretty. So they're both two examples of when your opponent's approaching your framework. Pincering might not be a good option. Now, right on the back of that, I had another one that I wanted to do. One where pincering was a good option. We were talking about the low Chinese. Where would that thought go? We were talking low Chinese, went to Kobayashi. What was a nice example of a pincer being good? It fit right in there too. If white approaches too close. Yeah, you could do that here. You could actually do that here. This is more for that's more stylistic though, because you could still say I'm not going to do that, and that's going to be okay. So I'm not going to get into that one. That's more of a Kobayashi lecture than when to pincer lecture. Let's see. Oh, well, that's one. Is that a good thing to do? No, I don't want to cover that. I wanted to cover... I think the other one? Here, just so you know, there's no right or wrong answer. You can pincer or not as you choose. Oh, that's one. Okay, thank you. I got it now. I got it now. I need white. I need white. You, and you. Starting off for a weak example, but we're gonna get to better ones. Typically speaking, when G3 and play... No, we're not going through that. Typically speaking, another good example of when you don't want to pincer is when you're pincering into a very strong area of your opponent. And you can easily read out that your opponent can do two things at once if you decide to play the pincer. Here, for example, we see obvious what Black's trying to do. Black could either try to get a bunch of influence to develop the bottom because he's got the 4-4 point there. Nothing's on the bottom as of yet. If he gets influence here, then it's easy to see that he might take a very large area here. So he might be tempted to say, all right then, I'm going to counter that by playing a pincer. Trouble with that is it's very easy in this particular instance for white to attack, or for black to attack and expand at the same time. Which is why it's typically regarded that, especially in this instance here, when our 3-4 point is facing our opponents as white, that we've made a mistake. I've heard a lot of people even flatly say, you don't do this, this white stone is a bad move. That if you lost the game, you lost the game with C4. Q16 should be at Q15, so says cool. So this one advice will raise my level to yes, probably will. So here, typically speaking, we usually back off, or we have something very, very special planned if we're going to play in this fashion. And I can go ahead and start making this a little bit more common to see in other areas. Let's say do I do it there? Yeah. Here's one that we might see it more common. Diagonal. Diagonal looks like he's played from time to time. This is another example, almost identical to the one that we just saw, where I'm going to cheat and move a stone so we can make it quote-unquote identical to what we just saw. There we go. Ah, you disappear. There we go. Where if we actually pincer here, we're going to probably wind up in almost the exact same situation. And and we don't want to be there. Even if our opponent approaches low, we're probably not going to do this for the exact same reason. If we pincer, it is entirely too easy for our opponent to start a fight that should favor him, because his attack is an extension as well as an attack on our stone. All we are trying to do is not die, and that's going to be a little bit more difficult as a result. Because how are we going to not die and prevent our opponent from getting a large area from the attack that he's now placed on our stone? It's going to be very, very difficult to do. There's no reason to invite that upon ourselves. We could, for example, just back off and be happy. If we just back off, our opponent's only going to be able to get a base. There's nothing else he can do, it's just get a base. Not the end of the world. If we pincer, then he's expanding, he's attacking. Bad things happening for us. Alright, so far, is there any chance that I can actually make heads or tails of this SGF tree? Alright, yes, there is. Sweet. So far, we saw one good example of when to pincer is when you're doing two things at once, such as expanding off of an enclosure to attack your opponent. We saw that here and here. Both of them very good examples. We saw... no idea what that was. Oh, I know what those were. Okay. We saw one example of when not to pincer is when you can just easily make territory. You can just state that I'm going to develop an area rather than I'm going to pincer you, have no idea where I'm developing, and probably hurting my development at the same time. As we saw here. Developing off lowstone, not good for us. We saw two different examples of that. One was bad development. The other was creating a problem for ourselves with this K3 stone. Because it's now a hindrance, we have to defend it. We're giving Sente to our opponent. We don't want to do any of these things, especially since we're dropping behind in territory. We saw... and I wish I could color code these branches so I can make them a little bit more easier to read. We saw that when we pincer into an area where black is pretty strong, that it can easily go badly for us. We saw it a little bit here, bit of a complicated variation, where black can develop territory and attack at the same time. We saw it a little bit easier in one of these variations that we're never going to find again. Nope. 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 Never gonna happen. There we go. We saw it in this variation where black can simply jump out and re-attack. And this should be the diagonal. Yep, same thing. We're pincered into an area that black can easily develop, the result of which we're now in a little bit of trouble. Alright, I think that covers the variations that we've gone through so far. Anything useful to say about 3-3 opening and pincers? No, not really. I don't see the 3-3 opening a lot. I'd rather look at some of the more common ones. Let's see. It depends on what... That's the board. That depends on the board. That's too much of the board. I mean, right now, I would say that if you're playing like 3-3 opening, you are probably playing a little bit too slow, and you need to realize why we don't play double 3-3 anymore, rather than if it's good to pincer here or not. I'd rather discuss. Yeah, I'd rather focus the discussion there than if playing the 3-3 is a good idea or not. Double Tengen, not possible to stack stones on a board. Let's see, does anyone have any questions about when to pincer? If they have specific examples in mind, I can let them set up. Swear to God, if you say this anything on the fifth line, I might have to smack you. Alright, I can give you control. I have no idea where my previous example was, so I'm just going to give you control so you can lay it out. Yep. Lol. That was funny. I laughed. Okay. Alright. Let's see. Before I say anything, what are your feelings on this? Was this a good use of pincering? And what does chat think as well? Good, bad? Is the development that we have here worth giving up our corner? Is essentially the question that we have to ask ourselves. Because black did two things at once. Black stole our corner, and black did it in Sente. White's developing a wall. So since we're only doing that one thing, that has to be a very large thing to do. I think it's okay. I want to see how much better it is in K3. Okay. I prefer back off F4. Alright, I don't like this. Simply because when I see the area that white can develop, I'm not impressed. The fact that black can extend from his corner, that's 1. He's also approaching our framework, that's 2, which is serving to also reduce us. I do not like this. If I'm playing this way, I had better have something else on the board, like, I don't know. Again, we're going to go into Fantasyland. Join me in Fantasyland when we change the board to our liking. Some weird amount of influence already on the board. Then I can say we're not just getting influence on the bottom of the board, we're tying it up to the top of the board, so now we're doing two things at once, and that's acceptable. That's a really good choice for pincering. And from here, we'd even probably continue the variation by playing the cap on such an approach. So here I would say it's okay, but if the board is this open, I would say it's probably not okay, because this is going to be very, very hard to use. You've kind of tipped your hand. Any kind of approach right now, you know you're going for influence, so your opponent's going to respond in kind. So this is going to be your area. You've chosen that this is the way you're going to develop, and without other development already on the board, really, real good luck. Good luck. Good luck trying to develop that. I wish you much luck. So yeah, I would still not play this. I would still be completely okay with just playing. I'd probably just play low here. I would be happy with playing low here. Though I would rather K4 was low, so I could play high. Or 1 away too, that's fine too. L3 would be nice. Does anyone else have any other questions about when to pincer? Because before I run out of time, I want to know what some of you guys think. When is it good to do a low pincer versus... Okay, that's just nitpicking pincers now. Alright, well, right off the bat, we already know kind of where that answer goes, you know? You can say, for example, that, well, what's the difference between the third line and the fourth line? Well, fourth line is more influential than the third line, so if, for example, I'm playing something like this, it's because I'm probably playing more territorial. I already have my eye on a follow-up of maybe this. Right? Whereas if I'm instead playing a high pincer, well, now I'm playing more influentially. And just to give you a real brief, obvious example of how you can play influential here, don't do that. That's not an example. Don't do that either. That's bad. Where we're getting influence on some part of the board, but our opponent is too, and again, that just gets down into Joseki. J17, okay, G17 should technically be at F17, but I'm greedy. Sorry, if you ever see me play 5 dons, you know I'm greedy. F16, I think is a little bit inferior. I don't like that. I think that's... Well, 1 is not Joseki. Could it technically be playable, though? I think technically it's playable, but I'm pretty certain that normally we just play there. But again, that's Joseki issues. And actually, we can actually extend off this, can't we? Let's extend off this. Let's say we played normally, our opponent approaches. We decide to, I don't know, do something here. I need to get black the free move. And black approaches. Here's another example. Here's another example. Do we pincer or do we not pincer? Pincer to help the stone. Yes. That's the other example that I was trying to think of earlier. When you're helping your own stones, pincering can be okay. Because if we back off now, then bye-bye D12, you're never getting a base. It was good to know you, but now you're going to get wrecked. All you can do now is run away, which you're going to find very, very uncomfortable. Go for this. No, we're not playing on the first line, thank you. Rather, we can pincer here, and our choice of pincering here is up to you. I would simply go with the one that doesn't leave the throw-in at the 3 by doing the 3 space extension. And if our don't do that either. And from this way we defend our stones. Ultra Urgent equals any move which provides a base for you and destroys potential for your base. Or any, what? Any move which provides a base for you, yeah, and destroys potential base for the enemy. Yeah, getting a base for yourself and denying one for your opponent, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Could you just treat D12 lightly and take the corner? I think the board might still be open enough for you to do that. I wouldn't. I don't think I would. I'd be a little bit worried about my stone. I don't want to run it out. In fact, if we wanted to make this even more concrete, we can go back to the initial Joseki and say that our opponent gave us an even larger wall than he did previously. And now we can be like, well, are we going to pincer from here? And if we don't, then that's going to be even more difficult to handle when we could just reduce and save our stone with just one extra move. So I think this example is a bit more clear than the other one. Why it would be a much better option to go back and pincer here. So alright, here is a good example when you can aid your stone. This also has the added benefit of reducing your opponent's framework. Though I have to be careful of that one. I have to stress that you must be careful. Pincering just to reduce your opponent can be a bit of a problem. If, for example, we took that same variation and removed a stone, now you're being risky, because your opponent can actually try to attack from this variation in a way you might not be happy with. Because now all you're doing is living. Black has a dual purpose move where he can surround all the things. So that would not be too great of an idea. Alright, I remember to mute on OBS, but not on Tygam, sorry for, or not on KJS, not, sorry for that. Not good, not good. Meant to mute both places. Let's see, I think that's it for now. Let's think of a really easy example. I don't think so. Yeah, I'm going to end part 1 of this example here. Part 2 that I tend to follow up with, I'm going to be using a bunch of professional examples rather than the ones that I've made up on when to pincer and when not to pincer. Won't be going over the full games. We'll just be going over just those situations, how they arose, a little bit of their continuation, why they chose to pincer when not to pincer, and then move on to the next game for the other example. That'll probably be next week. Or week after next, rather. So if you wish to see part 2 of this little lecture, then you can be here for that. If you miss any part of this, it will of course be up on my website and on YouTube later on. When you surrender at such points, how do you use shape? Shape lecture! Fun, you should ask that, because there was someone watching who is still here. Dasan has a shape lecture that is actually on YouTube nowadays, so you might want to go and look at that. He has the longest in-depth shape lecture that I am currently aware of on YouTube, and I don't have a link ready for that. Wait, is it in his profile? Is it in your profile, Dasan? Yes, it is, I think. Is this it? Yes, Dasan shape lecture. There you go. It's in his profile. So, there you go. Dasan did upload the fabled shape lecture. Yep, 3 hours of it. Might want to clear your calendar. But it's good. It's definitely good. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with part 2 and some pro games. For those of you who check my Twitter, I'm probably not going to be streaming tonight. If I do, it's just going to be one game on Puduk TV servers, and that's probably going to be about it. But I'm not sure. I have the green screen already up, so maybe I will. I'm not going back to Fly or Die. People complained about Fly or Die. They're like, that was the most unprofessional series you've ever done because I was insulting the server while I was playing there. And admittedly, that's not exactly professional, but And I don't want to play 30 queues again because you have to start from the ground up whenever you're on Fly or Die. Wait, did I miss the lecture? A little bit, yeah, but it'll be uploaded later. Well, whenever you're doing something such as, teaching, you can do it in a professional manner or you can do it in a non-professional manner. If, for example, you went to someone, let's say a 1-dan since you're 5Q, and you were, hoping to learn from them and they just insulted you and called you noob sauce all the time, while pointing out a few of your mistakes, that's not being very professional. Now, granted, you might be noob sauce, but, you don't point that out to someone. You let your friends do that for you. But alright, thanks for stopping by, everyone. I will see you all next time. Take care. There you go. That is the Dasan lecture.